so much, Phil, for hosting this talk today. What a great opportunity for me to discuss my 15-year First Amendment right project in the context of the goals of the culture of peace, and to be having this conversation with the architect of the culture of peace, Ambassador Chaudhry. I have been lucky enough to have a long-time relationship with A&I and with Cooter Cherry, who himself is a great visual artist. And I'd like to take a moment to give Cooter my undying thanks, truly. And I'm also very enriched by Phil Goldner and everyone at Harman Press. It is rare to work with as innovative a team. 15 plus years of material can be a heavy lift, compiling a book and printing an archival collection. I want to thank my editor, Deirdre Lenahan, who I know is out there, but I think we all want to give her a applause. And my layout consultant, Lord Zamel. And especially I want to thank Ambassador Chaudhry and Joanne Trofilis for joining us today. They both have come quite a distance. I met both Ambassador Chaudhry and Joanne Trofilis in 2006. During a time when each of us were taking stands against war and making efforts to promote peace. Joanne is the director of the Art Miles Mural Project and a 20-plus year veteran with the United Nations working for UNEP. I'd like to congratulate Art Miles on the opening of their Miramad Museum last night in the San Diego area at Oceanside. At last, the world can experience these decades of murals from around the world and the inspiring stories of all the artists that created them. As Phil said, it is the stories that we tell that contribute to altering the course of history and promoting peace. My focus has been to take photographs that create awareness and that celebrate the human spirit, to capture images that urge us to get active, as well as inspire us to think about our place in the world. When I began America Speaks, I was in search of a visual template, one that could help me relate the successful marches of my generation to today's protests. What would this legacy look like? Today's struggles are those of the everyday heroes, the ones that are minimized by mainstream media. From the instant that I held my sturdy 35mm FTN Nikon in my hand, it was 1967. My lens was drawn to documenting injustice. I learned early on to try to keep my point of view open. I like to capture the small moments that are oftentimes ignored. I never seem to tire of documenting what compels people to rise up. Maybe that's because I still believe photographs have the power to affect our overstimulated society. The challenge is to provide the image that would never have been seen. So often at these rallies, I find myself in a crowd of thousands, looking to grab the photographs that no one else is taking. I get swept up with the adrenaline of the crowd and the expectation that these images will serve as a catalyst for change. My project chronicles opposition in the United States at the dawn of the 21st century, as events polarized our nation. I question the success of today's dissent. How do we use our voice to advance our rights? Beyond the theatrics of demonstrations, how do we keep activism alive? In 2001, I was drawn in by the volatile mood from the disenfranchised election. And then 9/11 and the hundreds of thousands of ordinary citizens mobilizing against war in Iraq. I had the privilege to stand with military veterans and their families who lost sons and daughters. It was a time of chaos. People were confused and began to congregate. My photographs reflected a demand for peace. On the trail, I felt as if the country was slipping down a rabbit hole. I photographed the first Koch brothers fundraiser and found myself covering the antics of the Tea Party. I've had the privilege of being in the heartland, covering the assault on the American worker, and in Wisconsin when 100,000 people occupied their capital in Madison. I have joined women from coast to coast as we have fought and continue to fight to preserve our rights that are sadly eroding away. Yesterday marked the 43rd anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and still, the fight for a woman's right to choose continues. I have documented demonstrations against the repeal of the Voting Rights Act, a devastating reverse. I am moved by the individual portraits of those who have protested for the same thing for generations and are flabbergasted to see these laws overturned. Once again, they find the energy to get back out there. I can usually pick out those who have never protested before. It's their eagerness, their swift marching, their belief that being there is going to create the change. Then I see some of the same faces who after 15 years are here simply because they have to be. I question, what really moves us? My lens seems to gravitate to the black and white image of someone's face, creased with emotion, or an aggregate crowd waving placards with citizens shouting, or the vulnerability of peaceful demonstrators surrounded by today's militarized crowd control. My images of late seem to reflect the challenge of our right to assemble. In 2006, right in the middle of chronicling our nation, I was asked to go to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda at the end of the decade-long war. I bring this up today for two reasons. While I was covering rebel attacks on vulnerable villages, Joanne Twafilis had been in Rwanda, working with the United Nations, not as an artist, but she worked for the UN African headquarters, and after the conflict was looking where to set up the UN mission. And at the same time, Ambassador Chowdhury was the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations seeking to promote permanent peace, a permanent peace plan in the war-torn region of sub-Saharan Africa in his role as an advocate for the poorest countries of the world. While I was there were 4 particular incidents that furthered my understanding of what it meant to promote a culture of peace in the world. The first incident was when I was part of a convoy traveling through rebel-held Ruzizi Plain in Congo. On the road, we encountered a protest with women holding up a sheet that said they demanded an end to violence against Congolese women and speaking out against domestic violence. I got out of the van, and I remember everybody locked their doors and watched me as I followed the march. I was invigorated. I was caught up in their shouting and singing. I forgot I was white, I was an American, and I had a digital camera around my neck, but I became a part of their rally. The women were so grateful that anyone had come out to document this. It was so courageous for these women to openly protest. They were taking their lives into their hands. They knew they could be killed for this. I later learned from Michelle Bachelet's office, when she was head of UN Women, that these photographs were historic because no one else had a record that this protest even occurred, let alone on the exact date of the United Nations observance of Gender-Based Violence and Human Rights Day in 2006. Because it is Ambassador Chowdhury who is the consummate hero for women around the world, having fought and eventually succeeded in urging the UN to pass his resolution 1325. Women throughout the world owe a debt of gratitude to Ambassador Chowdhury. The next incident was when I was with the convoy once again, and again I asked them to stop. I saw a man standing with his 80-year-old father and a young girl. They stood next to a demolished house. I got out of the van and I approached him and asked his permission to photograph what had happened in his home. I knew he was a victim of the war. He was kind and generous, and he said to me he would be proud to have me photograph him and his father and his only child that had been spared after the rebels killed his 2 other sons, daughter, and his wife. He said the only thing he asked was that I take these pictures back and show the world what had happened here. I have photographed civil unrest in England and uprisings in Greece, in Guatemala, the Navajo Nation, and throughout the U.S. But it was this experience that carved in my mind the responsibility of being the messenger. I knew no one else would have this picture. And it was incumbent on me to honor his request. If only to reassure him that the world was watching and cared about his tragedy. This was in small measure our exchange of the true culture of peace between myself and this stranger who I had immediate love and compassion for. Finally, this last assignment challenged me beyond what I had experienced thus far in Congo. I was asked to document the aftermath of a series of rebel massacres that occurred on Ijwi Island. It was a long and fearful boat ride there during a shaky time in the DRC at the end of the war. We arrived on the island and everything about this assignment sickened me. The stench of death, covered up by sweet disinfectants and the 24/7 smell of burning bodies, huts, charcoal. It was just beyond human expectation. But where this inspired me was the survivors. The triumph of spirit that they courageously went on with their lives. And again, I knew I was the only one captured in these images. And that this story was my responsibility to tell. And I was limited in what I would be allowed to document. It was commonplace for rapes, massacres after 10 years of war. And after photographing the grave sites, my lens was pulled away by the children. They were playing and tagging me to take their photographs. I snuck away from the UN delegation who was there investigating the rebel leader. But it was in the faces of these children that I saw the true culture of peace, the hope for this community, the innocence that still existed there, and the stamina to live normal lives. When I returned to the US, I had a fire in my belly to see the same kind of triumph of spirit here. The same uniting for peace, hope for the future. But this was a dark period for our country, and my First Amendment Rights Project would continue to drag me across America and document march after march. The multiple issues were festering like wounds that just wouldn't heal. The economy was tanking, union rights were being lost, no end to the war, gun violence, women's rights being reversed, overwhelming. I was struck how fragile our democracy was at the time and how I would portray that. The rallies were bleeding into each other. Then the Occupy movement erupted, and I found a different image to reflect the times. Again, I went for a way to reinterpret the story and found myself affected by those who were using the camps to erect a tent because they had lost their house and they had nowhere else to go. I don't know if Ambassador Chowdhury will agree with me, but I felt a strong culture of peace in these Occupy camps. A way to have discourse and communication, to reframe the problems. There was hope. So here we are, 16 years later, out on the trail, no shortage of drama and chaos. And with everyone I have met, I am most inspired by the gutsy women who have really challenged the status quo. It is Granny D who I dedicate my book to and who I met in 2001. Granny D walked across the United States of America at 93 for voting rights. She was arrested for sitting in the Capitol reading aloud the Constitution. Her quote is my favorite celebration of activism. Some of us do not have much power except to put our bodies in the way of an injustice, to picket, to walk, or just stand in the way. It will not change the world overnight, but it is all we can do. Then in 2004, I met Betty Friedan, who formed the National Organization of Women. It was a highlight for me when she poked me with her cane and said to me, "You be careful, watch your back. They're coming after our hard-earned rights." At the time, I thought maybe she was exaggerating, or she just always felt women would never get off easy, but boy, she was right. When you look and how now we are still fighting for them not to overturn Roe v. Wade. Then, in 2006, I met Joanne Tofielis when Arun Gandhi came to LA to call for an end to the war in Iraq. Joanne brought murals with her that day, and she stayed behind, not marching, but hanging her murals so that when we returned to the main location, we could see a reflection of all of those in the past decade who were affected by war and called for peace. But the most inspiring and heartbreaking women that I have met on the trail were recently, in 2013, when I covered in Washington, D.C., 100,000 people who gathered to demand justice for Eric Garner, John Crawford III, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and to demand that the Justice Department file charges against the police that took their lives. But this rally became personal. I was more than the photographer, I was the mother. I was there that day, feeling the pain of all the mothers who were holding up the placards, signs commemorating their sons killed by police, images of these boys in their football jerseys or in their high school graduation gown. These were the images that were not covered by the headlines. These were the everyday heroes. And finally, I want to say who most defines my project is Vivian Applewhite. She epitomizes the power of one voice. It is in Vivian Applewhite's story and her dedication to voting rights that I end my book. Vivian Applewhite, 93 years old, African-American woman, was committed to her right to vote. In 2012, Republicans waged a campaign to minimize ballots cast by minorities. Vivian challenged the governor and the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, and her case drew national attention. I found Vivian's number in the phone book. I called her, and I told her I was going to come and see her. On my way to find her apartment, I was running late, and I called and I said, "Please forgive me." And Vivian said, "Where are you, dear? I'm having terrible chest pains. The ambulance is on its way, and I don't want to miss you taking my picture." I said, "Vivian, perhaps we should put this on." She wouldn't hear of it. When I arrived at Vivian's apartment, the music was blaring. And with the ambulance on its way, there was no time for Vivian to change clothes, so I photographed her barefoot and in a caftan. She looked straight into my lens, and I clipped off 6 frames while she explained to me how her case got all the way to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It started when she was robbed in the market and her purse with all her ID was taken. Vivian had voted in the same precinct for 25 years, but without any complaints eventually came to the attention of the ACLU. At 93, Vivian is unafraid to hold her government accountable. Her one-woman stand to ensure her vote helped protect the voting rights for countless Pennsylvanians. Throughout my lens, I marveled at this woman who was taking on the state of Pennsylvania all by herself. Throughout my journey, I've been seeing activism in terms of numbers, decibels, headlines, but it took Vivian Applewhite to demonstrate the perfect example of what I had been looking for all along. The power of one voice. The courage of one woman. I am continually reminded how women are stubborn. They use tenacity to bend the rules and find solutions. As Ambassador Chowdhury so elegantly and eloquently writes, quote, Women in particular have a major role to play in promoting the culture of peace in our violence-ridden societies, thereby bringing in lasting peace and reconciliation. While women often are the first victims of armed conflict, they must also and always be recognized as the key to the resolution of the conflict. Joanne, Joanne, in 2006, you introduced me to Ambassador Chowdhury. I am forever indebted to you to have the enormous privilege to know the man who raises the bar in forwarding world peace. Thank you.
That was really, really inspirational. Even though I've known Tish for so long, just hearing that speech brought all those images back, and thank you, that was beautiful. But my job today is to introduce my hero, and I know one of Tish's major heroes, who actually opened the doors for 12 miles of murals to be created by over 500,000 people in over 100 countries with their visual documentation of modern history. And we use photography to record those so we can share them with all of you. So thank you. All photographers, we love you. Ambassador Chowdhury has devoted many years as an inspirational champion for sustainable peace and development, and ardently advancing the cause of the global movement for the culture of peace. And that has energized civil society all over the world. He is a career diplomat, and I have to read this because his record of accomplishment and the prestige and the responsibilities that he held with those positions is, in my words, one of the ways that I can't even explain to you how this man walks the talk. If I were to ever meet someone like Mahatma Gandhi in my lifetime, it is my friend, Ambassador Chowdhury, and his wonderful wife, Mary. Former permanent representative of the United Nations, President of the UN Security Council, President of the UNICEF Board, UN Undersecretary General, the Senior Special Advisor to the UN General Assembly President, and recipient of the Youth on Peace Award, UNESCO Gandhi Gold Medal for a Culture of Peace, Spirit of the UN Award, and the University of Massachusetts Boston Chancellor's Medal for Global Leadership for Peace. Ambassador Chowdhury has a wealth of experience in the critical issues of our time: peace, sustainable development, human rights, and, as Tish said, a global leader and advocate for the rights of women. It is my pleasure to introduce this remarkable hero.
Thank you. Greetings to all of you. Thank you, Joanne, for your kind words and kind introduction. Mr. Purna, thank you for hosting this and giving us the opportunity to share our thoughts. In the month of January, I generally come to this side of the United States in California for my speaking, teaching, and meeting commitments. I've been doing that for some years. But this weekend, during this visit, has been very energizing. It will stand out in my activities as a reminder to me how the people that I work with have been contributing to global peace and global reconciliation. This weekend is special, as I said. Last night, I had the pleasure of participating at the opening of what is known as Muramid Mural Museum and Art Center, initiated by Joan Kopelis and her good husband, Fuad, at Oceanside. Those murals that Joan talked about was displayed there in their splendor and bring the messages of the children, 500,000 children from all parts of the world, carrying the message of peace. Yesterday's theme was Water for Life, and their murals presented the water and the living organisms there and carried the message that water is so essential for all of us. And now, today, I am here for this wonderful event and this photography exhibition by Tish Lamb. And Tish, you have spoken so eloquently, so inspirational, and so much from the heart, bringing out your messages for all of us. You spoke about everyday heroes. You spoke about moments of change. You spoke about efforts, how to take the messages of peace and equality through your images, through your photography. And it's true that I am very happy this weekend to be two of the persons whom I admire so much for their work. They have been really a true example how one individual can bring the message of peace and harmony through their work. We say, as we read the headlines every day, we are shocked to see how much of violence is going around the world. It has been the effort of the United Nations for the last 70 years to make the change. Peace is the central message of the work of the United Nations. But see where we are today. And as it is said that the world is overarmed and the efforts for peace are underfunded, underutilized, underappreciated, and unrecognized. And that is very important, that we need to understand that whatever efforts are being made need to be appreciated. And there comes the role of everyday heroes. And these are the common people, these are all of us individually and collectively who can bring the change. And as Tish's photos have shown again and again, that it is common man, common persons who can bring in the change by their determination. And I think that is a very key message that we carry by advocating for building the culture of peace. The culture of peace is a program which was initiated in the United Nations in 1999 as we were coming out of the Cold War, as the world was hoping to benefit from what we call the peace dividend, where the budget of the military will be reduced, there will be more resources available for health, education and development of the world. So I believe that this is what was needed, and we felt that if that is to be done, we have to make the culture of peace as part of our life. And that is the essential core message, that each one of us need to feel peaceful, non-violent, and able to face the challenges of our life in a non-aggressive way. We have to understand that aggression, violence do not help us to reach our goals. We need to appreciate that we can reach our objectives of life through non-violent means, in a peaceful way. Aggression, violence never achieved the purpose for which it was committed, and it has been proven time and again. And in this effort, where the young of today will get this message and create a self-transformation which will last forever in their life. That is why I say that to inculcate culture of peace in your life doesn't mean that you have to be a politician or a peace leader. You can do it in your own way. And violence does not have to mean always that there are war between two countries. Violence happens in our communities, in our society, in our families. And that violence has to go. And that is very important. And we see, of course, the absolutely unnecessary role that the unnecessary position that the guns have achieved all over the world. And this is something is very important to bear in our mind. And we should take a personal vow, each one of us, that we will never use violence in our lives in any form, in any way. And that is a very important point. And as I believe that the message for the culture of peace is very essential at the present moment, if we had devoted a little bit of attention by incorporating the message of the culture of peace, the message to transform ourselves in our education system, in our public advocacy program, in our work as representing the governments or representing civil society. We have been much ahead in our efforts for peace, but that has not happened. And another area I believe is essential to remember, that efforts for peace and the obstacles which are created in this process is generated for most part of the world through poverty. Poverty is a major challenge to promote peace. And I believe that this is very important as we say that development and peace are two sides of the same coin. One is not achievable without the other. So this is very essential to bear in mind. And while we live in a country which is the richest country, the most powerful country in the world, we sometimes forget about the rest of the world. It is very essential. 90% of the world's population live in the developing world, most of which are very impoverished. And that is very important. For them, the challenge is how to come out of poverty. And for us, worldwide, we should ensure that that eradication of poverty will lead to sustainable peace. Another area I would like to mention, which Tish has done wonderfully by bringing out the issues of women's equality. And it was a pleasure and honor for me to push this effort in the United Nations Security Council in March 2000. At that time, Security Council was in existence for 55 years, but it had refused to accept women's role and contribution in promoting peace and security. It had only portrayed women as victims of war and conflict, but never as a real contributor. And I have seen in my work on behalf of the United Nations, as the ambassador of my country, Bangladesh, I have seen all over the world, particularly in African nations, which have been most involved in conflict, how women have played a tremendous role in putting their communities together, in weaving together the shattered fabrics of their nations and their communities. How they have brought together the society to move on, the life to go on, while their men were fighting in the fronts. And that is a recognition which was needed, and I said, yes, I know that the big powers are not happy about this initiative, but I will continue to do that. And that resulted in a resolution popularly known as UN Security Council Resolution 1325. 1325. These four numericals have now, over the last 15 years, have generated tremendous energy and enthusiasm among peoples of the world, particularly women's organizations, women as such. And they feel energized. When you mention those four numbers, you immediately see a brightness in the face of people. And I think this is very important, and Security Council has recognized that, and we believe that recognition is not enough. Implementation of the first major objective of that resolution is necessary. It says it recognizes equality of women's participation at all decision-making levels. And now I add, though it is not in the resolution, I say at all times. It is very important. And I believe that we need to recognize, not only because of reasons of democracy, because women are more than 50% of our population. We cannot keep them behind if we want to make progress in our world. So how can you ignore women's participation and contribution and this traditional bias of men to keep them out of decision making, keep them out of participation, is something which needs to be resisted. And men should understand that it is not only because of women, but it is for the good of all, good of humanity, that women should have equal participation at all costs. I would like to say that, as I said, that the development is not possible without peace, and peace is not achievable without development. And to that I will add, neither peace nor development is possible without women's equality of participation. Remember, and this is something that we should advocate, and we should make it part of this aspect of equality. And I believe that equality everywhere is essential for global peace. And equality of the 50% of humanity is more than essential for our objectives. So, and those objectives are wonderfully represented in Tish's work. And what motivates me very much to appreciate Tish's contribution is her enthusiasm for human good, her enthusiasm to promote harmony among nations, among peoples, her enthusiasm and commitment to promote the culture of peace in its best possible form, and her work contributes to our common work for the culture of peace. My work, Joanne's work, everybody who are here are work together, and that is very, very important. And I am delighted that Tish is being recognized on the 25th anniversary of Photo LA, and that is a special recognition. We are all proud of you. I remember when you had your exhibition at the United Nations 2 years ago, I joined you in encouraging our common efforts, and it was wonderful that from that point you have come here, and we look forward to your years and years of commitment and work for the cause of the culture of peace, cause of women's equality, and bringing out the power of photography, power of images to convey the message. You know, sometimes it becomes difficult for advocates like us to go on speaking at length to bring one point home, but your one photo does that instantly, and that is the merit of photos, and that is the power of photos that we are recognizing here in the work of Tish Nanda. I'm happy and honored to be here.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, panel. We are going to open up for questions. Is that okay with you? If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. Sure. You want to speak loudly so we can hear you?
Thank you for being here. But my question is, with the success of Resolution 1325, how has this inspired you to continue your efforts towards your mission? And also, have there been opportunities for women to be involved in these peace talks?
I believe that Kelsey's question was how
has there been opportunity to women into the peace
how have there been opportunities to bring women to the peace table and to peace talks?
Yes, I think this is a wonderful question because this is a big challenge to all of us. Worldwide, women have been only 9% of all the peace negotiators for the last 10 years. Women have been the signatories of peace agreement. You know how many, what percentage? 2%. So women are not there in the peace table, but we are deciding about the situation of peace and harmony for the whole community, and women are 50% of them. This is a very interesting point that international peace negotiators, including the United Nations, which they miss. When women are involved in the peace negotiations, they think about the broader interest of the society, how their children and grandchildren will fare in those communities, how it will impact on them. But when men join there, they are always thinking of sharing power and authority, how we can become more powerful following the peace agreement. So this is a big challenge, and there is one thing, and we talk about also women's political participation, that they need to have equal political participation because we are talking about all decision-making levels. And it is said, when men join politics, they want to be something. When women join politics, they want to do something. And that is the difference. But it is, and this is the reality, and I appreciate your question. I think this is a big challenge, and we are pushing it. When Syrian negotiators met last year in Geneva, women were not allowed in. They were lobbying from outside, the women's NGOs. Same thing happened in the peace process for the Mano River Union, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Guinea. And then women were not allowed. The three presidents were sitting in a house negotiating peace treaties supported by all men advisors. The women surrounded the building and said, you have to have a peace agreement signed to the best interest of all. Unless you do that, we will not let you come out. And they concluded, and one of them, the organizer, is known by the name, you know her, Lema Bowie, who became a Nobel Peace Prize winner in 2011 along with two other women. And I would add that with great pride, that is the first time Nobel Peace Prize citation mentioned 1325. And first time any UN resolution was mentioned in the Nobel Peace Prize citation. So that is a big honor for 1325, but we have to go a long way to put equal number of women. I will tell this happened even simple form. In panel discussions we have in the UN, the panels are all men, or mostly men. And in one panel I was invited to come in to moderate. And I saw out of 6, only one woman. And I said, I cannot moderate. I have to leave. But they said, if the moderator is gone, and then our conference is gone. At the end of that meeting, I announced that from today, I will not moderate or participate in any meeting which do not have gender equality. And that was my personal.
So first of all, thank you. This has been such an inspiring day. I'm Ruth Roy Sharon. I'm the co-chair of the Southern California Parliament of the World's Religions. And I just want to tell you what happened in Salt Lake City. The first day was the Women's Assembly, the most amazing, inspirational women of every part of the world, every size, shape, and age. The feedback was so aggressive by not just women but men to the people who organized the conference that they admitted that they would never do that again. So, but I have a quick question for you, Tish, and a question for you, Ambassador. Can a lens ever be neutral? Can a photo ever be neutral? And to you, Ambassador Chowdhury, you mentioned the main things that have not been done were in the area of education, political advocacy, and the workplace. But it seems to me that one of the main problems about having the oppression of women being perpetuated has to do with religions. And if the women in the Middle East were given overnight the opportunity to be educated and vote, the whole world would change. So what is the UN doing with the different religions and getting them to propagate the notion that women are half of society?
Thank you so much, Ruth. Good question. I can only answer it from my perspective, and the answer is no. Yes, seeing is in the eye of the beholder. And as many of my colleagues here today, Betsy and several other professional photographers will say, we don't want to take a picture that's neutral. In fact, you know, this has always affected me in what is a snapshot and what is a photograph. So I think what you see is the photographer, I think Phil and Cooter and everybody at A&I would agree, what you love is to see the evolution of what you start to shoot and where it's going. And that actually teaches you the non-neutral voyage of the lens, because it's actually like a wave that carries you along. And then after you have achieved the sequence, I feel what you do is you decide yourself, A, if you were successful in capturing your point of view, but more important, what speaks to you from what you got.
Yes, the United Nations does a lot of work on interfaith, role of interfaith in promoting peace, security, development. But to me, I feel that they have not done much to promote the role of religions or interfaith activities in promoting women's equality. That has not been on their agenda. They say that they take a bigger picture and they promote what they call the alliance of civilizations. They work together with different religions to promote peace, to promote development. But I believe it is very important. And of course, I know a number of individuals belonging to different religions have promoted women's equality in a big way. One I know very personally is Daisaku Ikeda of Soka Gakkai International. He had been a great champion to promote equality of women. He has declared 21st century as the century of women. And I think this is one thing that individual leadership is very important on the part of anybody who is speaking about equality. And also I would say that interfaith work to me sometimes seems limited, because we ask various people belonging to various religions to bring the message of their own religion. So I come and I speak about my religion. I'm very happy that I have given my religion a very high level, a good prominence. And I say, oh, my religion is very good, equality-wise and every aspect. But I challenged in one meeting on spirituality that it would be good if I can find a person representing one religion speaking about another religion and see how much good he or she sees in that religion. It will be good for me to speak about another religion and another religion is speak about another religion. That will be good. Thereby we will show that we have interfaith harmony, that we believe in the goodness of all religions. No religion tells us to be bad. No religion tells us to be violent. But somehow it has been depicted in a different way. And this sometimes is taken too far by becoming permanent in the minds of people. So I think it's very important for us to speak about each other, to say what good I see. And this will have credibility, because you have your own standing in your own religion. But if you speak about another, I think that will bring a lot of credibility to our interfaith efforts. Thank you.
time, Phil. We have
Okay, after naive question. Okay, now we can use CNN, and some channel to learn about the world events and world news. So what is the unique aspect of photography that video cannot do?
Let me see if I understand your question. Can you repeat that one more time? How is the real...
Okay, now we have access to CNN and other news channels, to learn the world using a video. Okay, and so what is the unique, the special aspect of photography that video cannot do?
Well, that's a wonderful question. That brings to mind my hearkening back to Look and Life magazine, to the era where photojournalism and photography actually identified the emotion, the issues, the entire panorama of an era where we are so saturated with the image and CNN and the live news feed and the bombastic images that are flooded that we lose the value of what is significant about an image. I mean, I think all of us here can identify the images that have changed the course of our politics. Even, the brilliant post-Vietnam image of the child, or the images of, V-Day at the end of World War II. I wonder if anybody here can specifically identify an image, not a soundbite, and not a flooded news sequence over and over again that's shown on the news. Like Ferguson is a good example, where you saw the same picture over and over again of the same militarized cops, the same group, the same rallying. So I think your question really defines what we as a public are looking for, which is individuating our hunger to be able to actually still look at a picture and not get it from a mainstream news cycle. And so therefore, I sadly say, where are the newspapers and where are the magazines? Because you know what? Yahoo doesn't seem to specialize in those images so well.
Well, unfortunately, I see that we're getting a sign that we might be out of time now. Ambassador. Okay, so we'll be heading back to our booth, which is number 820. Just go straight down the hallway here.
It was very inspiring to hear about the women circling the embassy or where the talks were taking place and saying you can't come out until you've actually heard our voices and included them. So my question is just, at this point in time, how can anybody, any woman, any man, any average person contribute to putting that pressure onto the people who are in the position to bring women to the table itself? Is there somebody that you can flood letters and phone calls to, or what are some means that anyone can get their hands on?
Well, yeah, I think this is a major challenge. How to bring more women to the peace table. I will respond to your question in two parts. The first part is technical part, which has happened over the years, and I think this is a lopsided approach towards peacemaking, that those people who have guns get to seat in the peace table. And that is what has happened. Any rebel army which has guns are quoted by United Nations, other mediators. You come to the table, lay down your arms. So having arms becomes your passport to the peace table. Whereas women avoid guns. they don't want guns to give them that passport. They want their merit as equal partners in our societies to be present at the peace table. So that's a big challenge, and we are trying to advocate against that guns should not allow, is not the entry point. In Syria, all the rebel groups come to the table, but women and women's organizations working for peace are all outside. And this is very unfortunate. We have to ensure, and we are telling United Nations should take the lead, at least to bring those women in the peace table. Their involvement should add credibility to the peace negotiations. And I will tell you a story, a very interesting story. Nelson Mandela came to the Security Council to brief us on his role as the peace moderator in the Burundi peace process in Africa. And he was saying that I tried my best to get women on the peace table. Men, the tribal leaders, men with the arms would not agree. So in the evening, women are still interested in what is happening. So they would come, sit with me in the evening, have tea and talk and share what they think would be the best way to promote peace. And he said, in the morning I go to the meeting table and share those ideas. And men say, oh, those are very good ideas, we should accept. And he says, these are not my ideas. These are the women who come in the evening to meet me. I am sharing their ideas. So then the men got pushed back a little bit, but he says, if you are thinking their ideas are good, why don't you bring them on the table? Let them share their ideas directly with you. And that is, he said, I got the women to get involved. Men had no way of saying, no, I don't want them. Because they welcomed their ideas. And they thought this is the way to make progress. This is one thing. The other thing I will say, we should not care that we are only sitting securing our equality on the peace table. We as women contribute to peace in every day of our lives. We bring up our children, we carry the message of equality everywhere. And I think as we are finding out that the minds are being made about peace and violence very early in the childhood, we have an obligation to start talking about equality. Brother and sister, daughter and son have to treat each other equally. They have to take other women in their families, in their circle, absolutely equal. There is no difference. And that is the message that we should carry. Last night, one little girl came in Joanne's opening of the museum and asked me, why did you prepare the women's resolution? And I said, because we want all of you to be equal. Never consider yourself to be less capable, less equal than your brother. That is the message that we should. So women will continue, and hopefully men will continue to carry that message in our lives. And maybe at one point it will be so forceful and powerful that peace table will open up in any case. So let's hope.
So I'd like to thank everyone for coming to our session. We will now retire back over to the booth, which I said is at 820, straight down the hall. I think you'll see Tish's oversized work on both walls, Black Lives Matter, right? Both Washington.
If anybody's interested in signing up for a limited edition book, just leave your name on the sheet and we'll be in touch with you. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.